Hello and welcome to our course all about key principles of the subconscious mind and of emotional mastery. This course will be excellent for you if you've ever been in a position where you felt like you were self-sabotaging and you knew that you were in a space where you kept self-sabotaging, kept going through these patterns, you knew better, and yet you kept repeating the cycle. Or if you've ever been in a relationship where you felt like you were pushing somebody away even though you didn't want to. Or if you've ever been in a position in your life where you wanted to achieve a goal so badly, but you just felt stuck and you felt this push-pull sort of resistance in your life where you just feel in a rut. All of this has to do with your subconscious mind. And the conscious mind cannot outwill or overpower the subconscious mind. So you might have a goal that you really want to move towards in your life, but you might have subconscious programs that are holding you back. You might have this position in your life where you really love someone, really care for somebody, and yet you're pushing them away because you've got subconscious fears that are really alive and driving your behavior. Or you may have a conscious pattern or task or something you want to move towards, but your subconscious keeps pulling you back in. And the subconscious mind has a certain language, a certain way that it works. We can't just want to change in our life. We actually need to know how to reprogram using the language and the tools that the subconscious mind plays by. Because the conscious mind, while it can't outwill or overpower the subconscious mind, it can figure out the programs of the subconscious mind and use key principles and tools to actually reprogram those limitations. So throughout this course, you'll learn the foundation you need to understand your subconscious mind, how it works, and the key concepts you can use to really make sure you get to hack the system and speed up your growth, your change, anything that you want to transform. When you target it at the subconscious level, it becomes so much easier to create change in a frictionless way. Now, what you'll see throughout the school here at PDS is all of the school is personal development, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's in your friendships, whether it's in your workplace, your relationship to money, your physical health and well-being. All of the school is personal development for the subconscious mind. Every single course is positioned in a way that helps you target your subconscious programs so that you can actually create major transformation. And your subconscious mind is largely responsible for your emotional state. So what we're going to cover here today are some core concepts, including 12 key principles that you need to understand about how the subconscious mind really works. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how to master your emotional state by understanding subconscious programs that might be creating a lack of fulfillment in your life. And then we're going to start with some early reprogramming tools that will help you learn how to actually start shifting these programs and reprogramming for things that you want to have there as beneficial programs in your life instead. This is also a great refresher course, a great thing to come back to if you've been doing a lot of your journey and you've become much more secure and you really want to just come back and maintain. This is a fantastic course for those purposes as well. So what you'll see here is in the next module, we're going to do a deep dive into 12 key principles of the subconscious mind that you don't want to miss, because this will help you really understand yourself, your behavior, and what it takes to create transformation, and also why a lot of the things in your life may be holding you back. So let's discuss 12 key principles that you need to know about how your subconscious mind works. It's so interesting because we live so much of our lives and so many of our decisions, our feelings, our behaviors, our actions are driven by our mind and our mind's choices. And if we don't have like the handbook or the manual for how our mind's working, it's like we are diminishing our ability to achieve our goals and potential so substantially that it's like an injustice almost in the relationship to ourselves. So these are going to be sort of your learning manual, things to keep in mind about how you work, how your mind works, and how you can actually leverage this information for like massive change, for goal accomplishment, for fulfillment, for healthier relationships, just in general to make sure that you feel like you are thriving more in your life. So principle number 1 is that the conscious mind, as I just mentioned, cannot outwill or overpower the subconscious mind. The statistic is that roughly 88% of people fail their New Year's resolutions within the first week or less. And we can think that of this as an example of like you have your conscious mind setting goals, and then your subconscious mind may be disinterested in those goals or may have things that are actively blocking those goals from being achieved. An example of this could be that your subconscious mind believes that you're not good enough to achieve a goal. And so it feels afraid of trying because it assumes failure. So you may start out trying to do something, but then fear may drive you in a completely different direction. We also have subconscious needs, and sometimes you can set a goal that's totally out of alignment with your subconscious needs. And so you'll have this push-pull effect where it's sort of like you put the gas on in the car and then your subconscious mind is constantly pumping the brakes and you just can't seem to really get ahead or gain traction. All of this has to do with the fact that the conscious mind cannot outwill or overpower the subconscious mind. Principle number 2. We all acquire our subconscious programs through the things that we are either repeatedly exposed to, especially in childhood, B, the first-hand experiences that we have, also especially in childhood, and C, the things that we hear repetitively. All of these 3 things create neural pathways, essentially, that are strengthened by repetition plus emotion. So let's say, for example, you're repeatedly exposed to your parents fighting in your early childhood or upbringing. Well, your subconscious mind might acquire these programs going, oh, love and relationships are about fighting, subconscious comfort zone around chaos, perhaps, and sort of the roller coaster relationships. And you might see that as you grow up, you actually take on some of those patterns until you're able to realize that these things exist and do the work to reprogram. Number 2, the first-hand experiences we have could be something like you get bullied on the playground in childhood. And so you make this belief up that, oh, people don't like me naturally. And so then this program might be something that totally impacts all of your interpersonal relationships and interactions going forward. And number 3, when we talk about the things that we hear repetitively, a great example of this could be your parents always saying, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough money. And then you grow up to have these lack beliefs in your relationship to money because the repetition and emotion of you constantly having this experience of hearing, oh my gosh, we don't have enough money, and feeling that emotional response of small stress, that is what is firing and wiring these big programs that can have a massive impact on our life. And that brings me to principle number 3, which is that repetition and emotion is what programs. Principle number 4, the language of the subconscious. And this is like the really important stuff here. The language of the subconscious is emotion and imagery. So your conscious mind can speak in English. It can use key terms and concepts and words that it's used, for example, like English, like in the language of English. Your subconscious mind doesn't hear that stuff. It only sees imagery and feels emotion. So if you ever had the experience, for example, of trying to talk yourself out of something and be like, maybe you feel really stressed and afraid, right, about something you're going to try. Maybe you're going to go bungee jumping. And you feel really stressed and afraid, and maybe you're trying to talk yourself down and you're like, I'm okay, it's going to be fine, I'll be fine. Sometimes it doesn't really land. Like the talking yourself out of something sometimes doesn't really do much. And it's because you're trying to communicate to your subconscious from language, which it doesn't really read or pick up on. Now, if instead we can communicate through emotion and imagery by instead visualizing ourselves getting safely to the other side, feeling a sense of safety in our body, emoting a sense of comfort, safety, feeling just like good, relaxed, at peace, calm, visualizing ourselves. And again, I said get to the other side, but I really mean like getting, finishing your bungee jump. If you could emote that, it's actually going to land a lot differently. And so we have to really learn how to use these tools and concepts to really navigate our lives so that we can use what we want to change consciously and communicate that so that it can be received at the subconscious level, because a lot of our emotions, a lot of our behaviors, a lot of our actions, feelings, thought patterns, beliefs, they all exist at the subconscious level. So it's like when we try to only deal with it consciously, it's a major limitation. Number 5, when we want to make ourselves feel better, we actually have to then use this proof to speak to ourselves in this subconscious mind's language. And when we want to end self-sabotage or take up new behaviors, we have to engage the subconscious mind in the process. So if we see ourselves in a space of self-sabotaging something, it's actually because you have more programs driving sabotage than driving what it is that your conscious mind's trying to create or do. And I always say to people, there's no such thing as self-sabotage. Everything's just a subconscious strategy to get different needs met than what your conscious mind intends. An example of this would be, let's say I decide that I'm going to work on a project. Let's say I'm going back to school to do another certification, and I'm going to work on a project for that. But let's say my subconscious mind has really deeply unmet needs for like social and emotional connection. What I might find is that when I have to do a project, or when I have to, do something that's a task related to school and the certification, my subconscious mind might be pulling me in a totally different direction. I might be really restless, I might be procrastinating, I might be self-sabotaging, and I may be in a position where I'm feeling pulled in a different direction totally. Now, if I can tune into that and figure out what direction I'm being pulled in and why, I can actually identify those needs and overlap that with my conscious mind's task. Don't worry about this too much right now. We've got a full course just on this, which is our self-sabotage and procrastination course, overcoming them and reprogramming them. But let's just say, for example, if I realize, you know what, my mind's pulling me towards social outings and social events. I keep trying to watch YouTube videos that have to do with social things. I keep visualizing, imagining myself doing social things, and I'm procrastinating, and I'm just craving to go out and hang out with people. Well, then what's happening is I can realize that, and I can be okay, how can I overlap these two things? How can I start doing social things while studying? So maybe I put together a group study session. Maybe I go to a cafe to do the work that I have to do, so I can just get that feeling of being around people. When we overlap our conscious mind with our subconscious mind's needs, all of a sudden we get into a position where we can start crushing things that we were stuck on. So it's a really powerful tool to be able to identify what's going on at the subconscious level and then link up with it, so that we don't have this push-pull situation. Instead, we're seamlessly moving things together. Now, again, don't worry too much about that right now. We literally have the entire course about reprogramming self-sabotage and procrastination. For now, I just want you to understand this principle of that push-pull dynamic and why we end up procrastinating or self-sabotaging. And principle number 6, before I give you the next 6 exciting principles in the next module, is that we can use repetition and emotion to reprogram. And usually when we use repetition plus emotion, these programs start to really take profound hold within 21 days. So even if you've had a core belief about yourself that you acquired at 5 years old in kindergarten because of a terrible experience that happened one day at school, if you've had this belief for years, for decades, that says, I'm not good enough and people dislike me, you can actually isolate these beliefs, and within 21 days of using repetition and emotion, which will give you specific tools in this course for how to do this today, you can actually transform that program altogether. You can actually create major changes so that you're no longer living your life assuming that that's the case, feeling that way on a regular basis, limited and afraid in your actions and behaviors that might have been really plaguing you for so long. And we can actually release these different things. This is really powerful for things like, lack beliefs around money, failure beliefs when we want to start a new career, we want to make a career change in life, or just things in general. If we feel like we're unlovable, unworthy, that boundaries, having boundaries will make us a burden to other people, we're not deserving of love or connection, these beliefs that can really, these abandonment beliefs that we can carry for so long, we can create massive change around. So stay tuned and jump into the next module with me, where I'll take you through the next 6 key principles. And take a moment right now and just write down anything that really stuck out to you, or just take a mental note even of wow, these are some things I can see myself really utilizing for some of the limitations that I currently see showing up in my life. And I'll see you in the next module. So let's begin with principle number 7. This is called the ironic processing theory principle. This is the idea that if I tell you right now, do not think of the pink elephant, notice where your mind goes and what it does. It probably pictures an image of a pink elephant, right? And the idea here is that when you tell your subconscious the no's, the nots, do not do this, do not, your subconscious mind really has a hard time reading language. It's back to that point where it's like it doesn't hear the language, it hears the image of what you're saying, thinking about, expressing, or feeling. And so your subconscious mind, when you're trying to reprogram, and we're going to talk a lot about this as we go through some reprogramming principles later in this course, your subconscious mind doesn't really hear the nots and the don'ts and the no's. So if you're trying to reprogram, for example, a belief that says, I am always sick. Maybe you're feeling like you're always getting sick. You're always worried about getting sick. And maybe you want to just feel a greater sense of like well-being in your life, and you want your like actions, behaviors, feelings, everything to line up with that. And you want to bring, obviously there's a lot to health as well, but like you want to bring your mind into the process to speed up your healing process, your well-being process. You don't want to tell yourself on a regular basis when you're doing reprogramming work, and we'll talk about the details of reprogramming tools later on, but you don't want to tell your subconscious mind, oh, I am not sick. You want to say, I am healthy. Okay, so you want to be able to reframe things in the positive and the opposite. And I don't want you to worry about all the details of everything right now, because I'm going to take you through step by step later in this course, how to do the reprogramming work, all that stuff. And keep in mind, you've got all these principles written in your workbook, but I just want you to sort of digest some of these concepts with me here and just like let them in kind of thing, and sort of see how they're working. So if we want to create change, we can't say, I don't have lack beliefs anymore around my relationship to money. You want to say, I feel abundant in my relationship to money. So you always want to be for the solution instead of against the problem. Number 8, there are no idle thoughts. This is a really, really important concept. Remember we said earlier, the subconscious mind is programmed through repetition plus emotion. Well, if we are repetitively thinking about how we're not good enough, not smart enough, not interesting enough throughout the course of the day, as long as those thoughts are eliciting an emotional response, which most of them are, you are going to be in a position where you're actually actively programming yourself throughout the day on autopilot. So we have to ask ourselves, what's our internal dialogue like in the relationship to ourselves? How do we talk to ourselves when we feel triggered, when we make a mistake? Are we just programming ourselves to further and further feel down, feel bad, feel not good? And if that's the case, we have to be able to start creating some change, okay? Principle number 9, and this is really important to recognize here. As we acquire beliefs, beliefs are a major source of what creates patterns of thought. So if I believe I'm not good enough, I'm going to have thoughts about how I'm not good enough in work, how I'm not good enough in my appearance, how I'm not good enough in school courses if I go back to school and take more courses. I'm not good enough in my relationships. I'm not a good enough partner, friend, all these different things. So belief patterns, core beliefs especially, which we'll go through, create patterns of thought. Thought and belief patterns are what produce, a major source of what produces emotion. And emotion, neuroscience has proven that all of our emotions are driving our decisions and behaviors. Even people who think they're very logical, rational thinkers are actually making emotionally based decisions at the tipping point, and then are just quick to rationalize or justify their decisions through logic. So what we have here is essentially this. Whatever belief and thought programs we acquire from early on in life or childhood are driving the way we feel and are driving the actions and decisions we make in our lives. So if we're not in charge of what these programs are, then we're not really that in charge of our emotions or our actions. And this is the secret to creating the life that we want. If we can start at the thought level, at the belief level, and really create major changes there, everything else will follow. We pick up the vast majority of our programs before the age of 8. And then these create the perceptual filter we see the world through and the assumptions we often make. So don't get me wrong, our programming will always change. We're acquiring more programs as we go throughout life. Traumatic experiences can create new programs. Big life changes can create new programs. Any big changes where we've got lots of repetition and emotion will create new programs. But the vast majority of like the system is built out because we are in a super suggestible state. We're basically open to being programmed. That's what suggestibility means. Um, very much so in the first 8 years of life. And this is why when we talk about things like attachment theory and relationships, our attachment styles have such a profound impact because we learn these rules, these programs for how to relate to other people at such an early age. And so when we try to dig in and work on reprogramming, a lot of it has to do with like isolating the way our childhood experiences impacted us and things like that, because this filter ends up really driving our assumptions and interpretations of events, and will ultimately create a lot of glass ceilings in our lives and even self-fulfilling prophecies. So for example here, you might see that you have this belief that you're not good enough, okay, that you acquired in childhood, perhaps because you had a critical parent. So the criticism of that parent was like the repetition of you feeling not good enough, okay? So lots of criticism coming at you, repetition creates an emotional response, you feeling not good about yourself. There is a program for I'm not good enough. And then what happens is if we believe that we're not good enough, think about what we just talked about, how that drives our emotions and our actions. A few things are bound to happen. Let's say we go in for a job interview. We might get really worried, like, oh, I'm not good enough for this job. I'm not good at interviews. I'm not smart enough. I'm not effective enough. And we may get into a position where we're so worried, feeling-wise, thought-wise, belief-wise, going into the interview, that acts as a glass ceiling. It totally disrupts our ability to perform to the degree that we could in that interview. Let's look at another version. Maybe we feel not good enough. We get so down on ourselves that we believe we're not even worthy of that job or that interview, so we don't even bother applying. So you can see here how these programs that we pick up at an early age drive so much of our decisions and actions and behaviors. And this takes me to our next principle, which is that the subconscious mind, this is very important, works very hard in life to maintain its comfort zone. And what I mean by this is that your subconscious mind, once it has its set of programs, it's not quick to change its programming. The reason is that your subconscious is really survival driven at the end of the day. It associates like familiarity, meaning like if I know what's coming and what's familiar, I'm more likely to be safe and I'm more likely to survive. So we can have a program that we've been carrying for years and years, a program about how we're not good enough. And we might have a lot of resistance to changing it and our subconscious will actually fight back a little bit to try to, no, I don't want to believe I'm good enough because then I'll just fail more and feel even worse about myself. So we'll have natural resistance, but all of these things can be taken care of. And we'll have some hacks that you can learn about later in this course today in terms of how to create change and not have to be limited by your subconscious need to maintain its comfort zone and its familiarity. But this is why you'll see, for example, a lot of people entering into the same types of relationships over and over again, having the same types of ways that they self-sabotage their life, having the same like things that are holding them back. It's because your subconscious is really working to keep what's familiar. And last but not least, your subconscious mind picks up to 1 billion bits per second of data, while your conscious mind picks up to 40 to 60 bits per second of data on average. And so your subconscious mind is this massive warehouse picking up on everything, noticing everything in a room, in your experience. Your conscious mind is only gathering a little tiny bit at the tip of the iceberg by comparison. And research actually shows that our subconscious and unconscious mind collectively drive about 95 to 97% of our feelings, our thoughts, our behaviors, our beliefs. And our conscious mind is only 3 to 5%. So there's a major difference there in terms of not just what your subconscious mind is taking in, but also in terms of how much impact your subconscious versus conscious mind has on your life. So stay tuned for the next module because we're going to do a deep dive into how this actually affects our emotional state. And then we're going to really dive into key principles and tools of reprogramming, and I'm going to help you plug in things that you want to change in your life so that you can really reprogram them and see transformation efficiently.